Hi, we're Mary and Jerry Royal, and we have had the privilege during this quarantine time to get to talk about parenting, which is something that Jerry and I love to talk about. And today we're back for session 4, and we're getting to talk about some really fun stuff. We hope you guys enjoy that. We're going to talk about how to delight in your kids. Now, when I said that it was fun to talk about, it is because it's fun to talk about, but it's not easy to do. So hopefully, we hope that you leave today just a little bit more encouraged in what it looks like to delight in our kids and what our kids' greatest needs are in that. So we hope you really get a takeaway from that and how to delight. So Jerry's going to start us and take it away.
That's good. I want to say this before we start talking about how to delight in your kids. Almost as a disclaimer, when we teach on parenting, especially I think when I teach on parenting, I'm so intense. I'm such a clear-cut, right, wrong, black and white kind of person that it could come across that either A, we have perfect kids, or B, we're perfect parents. I promise you, I can speak for myself, I have regrets already in 21 years of parenting.
For sure.
I've never met anybody in most of life that doesn't have regrets. I want to meet somebody in life that says they have no regrets. I have plenty of regrets in life. Mm-hmm. And already in my parenting, I have regrets. And I think we talked about this the first week when I even gave the illustration of my son, Kip, that I realized the first 5 years of my life, I was not at all practicing what we're going to teach. And the Lord kind of showed me that, and I have to spend the last 10 years making up for some of those regrets of the first 5 years. So I want you to hear us say we all are growing and learning as parents. Our motivation for sharing this series has nothing to do with do it our way. It has to do with we're going to share with you what we learn, especially in 25 years of student ministry about parenting, what we learned from God's Word and what we've been able to put into practice in our home. We're sharing this with you out of our sense of we have a passion and burden for families and parents, and we want to help teach you as much as we can and share this journey with you. And so that's our motivation and passion. But you need to know that all of us have regrets. Mm-hmm. And so we learn, we grow, we start over. We listen to people that for some reason, like us, God's given us a little bit of insight on parenting in family life and marriage. And so out of the overflow of that, we want to share these things with you. And that's our heart and our motivation. So real quickly, last time we talked about how to pass on your faith to your kids. In doing so, we showed you the basic styles of parenting. And real quickly, let's review those. It was based on Ephesians 6:4, where it says fathers, or in the Greek, it's the word for parent there, literally. Parent, do not provoke or instigate your children to anger. Or we said there to being extremely burned out was the word there. But rather, you bring them up or raise them in two things. First of all, the discipline of the Lord. And second of all, the nurture of the Lord. And you remember last time we took that verse and saying, this is balanced biblical parenting. A healthy balance of discipline. And we use the term delight or delighting in your kids. We said last time, a quick reminder, that the worst kind of parenting, the most unbiblical kind of parenting, is extreme parenting. And generationally, we parent in extreme. Old generations, pre-1990 and way beyond, they parented primarily out of discipline, harshness, rigidity. The last 20 or 30 years, parenting swung the other direction, and we discipline out of delight. Biblically, there's to be a healthy balance of each, and wisdom dictates that with every child in every season of their life, I know which would they need from me more, discipline more, delight more. This morning, does she need discipline more, delight more? But it's a constant thing we want to teach you that Scripture says biblical best parenting is balance. So here was the styles. First one was this we talked about. Here's an extreme style. Discipline minus delight, and that's old style really. That's pre-1990 especially. It produced great rebellion and distance in the home, especially folks in the church it did. Second style was the other extreme, and this is the current style, we think. A whole lot of relationship, very little rules, and that produces in kids a sense of disrespect, resentment. We would even say in extreme cases, great disdain for home, parents, even authority. Now, let me show you something we didn't teach you last week real quickly. When you take style number 1 in a Christian home, you have heavy discipline, very little delight, and then you add religion, or we use the term dogmatism, a lot of legalistic, intense teaching without delight, you'll destroy a kid's faith. The question was last week, how do you pass on your faith? We said it's an environment of, we're going to say this in a second, a lot of delight, a lot of discipline. If you really want to, and I know this can be strongly said, if you really want to destroy a kid's faith and push them away from the faith, they grow up in a home where there's heavy discipline, little delight, and then you add religion to it. In other words, rules minus relationship plus religion is almost a surefire way for rejection. So our point so far in this series is to tell you that we believe, and this is a radical way to teach, and we don't ever hear anybody else saying this. No kudos to us, but this is what we're saying. The key to passing on your faith to your children is not so much your discipleship, not so much your dogmatism, not so much even your dynamic church, all things we said you need last week. It is in how you're able to delight in your kids and how they feel delighted in by you, because they will receive your religion, if you will, your faith, when there is an environment in your home from you toward them that you delight in them. We said last week that I will receive your God when I know you receive me. I want to hear about your love of God and love for God when I see in our home toward one another and towards us, love expressed towards us. We said everybody loves their kids at some level. Where the Christian home has missed it is they've missed the ability to express delight and express love to your kids. And we would tell you, in all the ingredients we talked about last week, that it needs to happen to a kid to really pass on your faith to your kids, we'd say the most important one is delighting in your kids. Mm-hmm. Correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, too, if you listen to any of our stuff that we did on how to build your faith in your kids, one of the things that we saw from student ministry, and again, that is our vantage point, and you've probably gotten that 1,000 times from us, but it is the vantage point we have. What we took from student ministry and watching families was so interesting is that we would see some kids come through whose parents weren't even believers. But they felt so delighted in by their parents that they were just great kids. They weren't necessarily spiritual, but they were able to come in and embrace faith in a new way because they really hadn't been tainted by it or exposed. And it really brought up a lot of questions for Jerry and I, like, wow, why are we building spiritually into our kids if these kids that come from homes that don't have any religion or any faith can come out of it and feel more loved and feel more healthy than kids that come from Christian homes. And it was a real kind of conflict for us. Like, wow, some kids that come from supposedly great Christian homes didn't love God as much as kids that did. So I only say that to say what we said, if you have to seesaw between discipline and delight, landing on that delight, in our opinion, when a kid feels delighted and loved, then they embrace things in such a different way. So it was great encouragement for us as Christian parents that our faith is so important, but that them buying into us and that relationship with us is what helps them embrace the faith. So we hope you hear that in this.
Yeah, love conquers all. Love covers a multitude of sins in the home. I'm so much more apt to love your God when you love me. I always think of our missionary friends overseas. They told us that when you go from our country to a foreign land as missionaries to share your faith, you don't walk in there the first few months and knock on everybody's door and tell them about Jesus. You know what you do? You go to an area or to a village and you build relationships with people. You love on folks so they trust you. And then from that, you earn the right, because of your love for them, then to share Jesus. You don't share Jesus first and try to love them. No, I don't have a right to be heard. That's a great principle of home. I love on my kids, and they experience love in our home. And then as we talk about God's love and explain God's love to them, then they embrace that much more. I don't try to share religion first, then build a relationship. I build a relationship and then share my faith. I'm using the word religion as far as our faith in the Lord. Yeah. Here's the recipe for failure is religion without relationship does not work in a home. I'll give you one more verse to back this up. 1 Thessalonians 2:11 says, now, again, remember a while ago, here was the mantra was discipline plus delight is God's design. Rules plus relationship, Scripture is right. Now here's the verse, 1 Thessalonians 2:11. I think it's the best verse in the Bible on parenting. I think it's the most summary verse in the Bible on parenting. Here it is. Just as you know how we were exhorting and encouraging, think of delight, and imploring, that's the word for discipline, each of you as a father should his own children. So if you have to err, you err on exhorting and encouraging while disciplining. So where Ephesians 6:4 says, you both nurture and discipline, Paul comes back in 1 Thessalonians and says, well, it's kind of 2 to 1. And so, again, just make the point. And one more verse I want to give you guys, and we're going to watch time today. We're going to end at 28 minutes wherever we stop. Proverbs 15:17 says this: better is a dish of vegetables where love is than a fattened ox served with hatred. That's a home verse. We're sitting down in the meal. We can have all the religion in the world, but if there's not love, it's better. It's not as good as we're going to sit in a home where there's a lot of love. That's better with just a little crummy vegetables than have some lavish spread of food and there's no love.
Sure.
It's a good verse. Okay, here's the question then. How to delight in your kids. Here's where it starts. Big concept. Let's ask the question to answer the question, how you delight in your kids. What is your kid's greatest need from you emotionally? Well, there it is. It's the word acceptance. Even in the Christian home, acceptance is their greatest need from us emotionally. Matter of fact, I will tell you that the basis for every successful, great relationship is acceptance. I can only flourish in a marriage where I feel accepted for who I am. Every relationship can only go as far as the level of acceptance I feel from this other person. If I feel like the person that I'm in a relationship with, my kids or in a marriage, if my kids feel like I can't accept them for who they are, there is no way they feel delighted in by me. And here's what acceptance is. Let's define it this way. It's valuing a person's unchangeables. I want you to understand there's a big difference between acceptance and approval. When we're talking about accepting our kids, we're not saying that we approve of every action of your kids. And let me show you how we put this on a diagram, if you will. Acceptance is meaning I accept my kids' unchangeables. And think of all the unchangeables in our kids that they can't even change about themselves. Their appearance, many times their personality, their gifts, their talents, many of their abilities, their intellect. There is so much about our kids, each one of our kids individually, that they cannot change. But if we are expecting them to change in their unchangeables, if we're actually rejecting them in their unchangeables, well, there's no way in the world they're going to feel your love or feel your delight. Does that make sense?
Yes. And I think what's really hard about this as parents is it sounds so great to accept these unchangeables, but it's really hard because a lot of us come from our own backgrounds of giftedness and values and things that we think are important. And I know, for instance, music was a huge part of my background, piano and those kinds of things. And it was different for Jerry. Athletics was everything. And so you kind of have to adapt and morph those ideas when you have kids, because not every kid is musically gifted and not every kid is athletically gifted. Those are just examples. Mm-hmm. But really learning to embrace what your kids are good at and what they're not good at. And I think that becomes really difficult to steer our kids when they're not good at things, but they want to do things. But this whole idea of acceptance is so important. And if you think about it, like Jerry said in marriage, we were just talking to a married couple the other day about, I think one of the things we've learned in 20-something years of marriage, I lost track, is learning to just accept one another for who we are is so powerful. It's so hard because there are things that I wish Jerry was different, and I know he wishes there were things that I was different in. But there's so much power in being able to just accept that most of us are not changeable. Mm-hmm. And that's a great gift to give to our kids, but it takes a lot of work and a lot of humility and a lot of dialoguing to do that.
I think of so many people through the years who I can think of in family where a mom would not accept her daughter because she had an introverted personality. The mom wanted her to be an extrovert. Or the daughter wanted to be a great student and the mom wanted to be a cheerleader. Yeah. Well, that daughter, she came out of the womb with a certain intellect and certain passions and gifts. How much more healthy for that child would have been if that mom could, or dad, whatever the case, accepts a child for who they really are. It's very, very difficult to do. Well, when we do marital counseling, one of the first things we say is, have you all been able to accept each other for who you really are? Well, when you break it down, somebody's saying, no, I cannot. I go, well, then it's never going to work. Because I can never be healthy in my relationship to you until I know that you accept me and the things I cannot change.
We're talking about things you cannot change. We're talking about things that,
Now, here's the difference. We're not saying that you approve of everything of your kids. There are plenty of things of your kids that are changeable. As a matter of fact, sin is changeable. Mm-hmm. The sin of disrespect or of defiance or outright disobedience, we don't approve of that. We don't approve of sin. We discipline at a certain level their changeables. We accept and delight in their unchangeables. We discipline they're changeable. And that is a huge difference. And let me tell you, a kid inherently knows the difference. They know when they are being disciplined for something they cannot change or not accepted or not loved. Well, they'll reject you. It's very, very unhealthy for them. Every human being wants to be accepted for who they are. I'm only this tall. I'm only this smart. I only have this personality. I only have this ability. I'll never forget I think one of the most endearing things my dad did for me years ago was you talk about sports. Well, I grew up a baseball player, and that was the thing I was most gifted at, but I really couldn't stand baseball. And my dad had these dreams for me in baseball. I'm in high school varsity baseball and all these things when I'm 10th grade. I couldn't stand it. And he kind of lived through it, through my baseball. And I'll never forget, after my sophomore year in high school baseball, I just thought, I cannot endure this anymore. I can't stand this. I want to play football. I don't want to play baseball. And I will never forget how smart was my dad. We don't usually have heart-to-heart talks, but we had a heart-to-heart talk when I was about 16 years old. And I said, Dad, I don't want to play baseball anymore. I'm sorry, it's just not me. I don't like this. I want to do other things. And I never forget what he said. He said, I've always wanted you to be a baseball player. And I'm kind of sad about this, but I'm going to let you do what you want. And he actually said, I'm going to accept this. And you're fine. That has always been endearing to me because he could have made me do it. He could have said, no, you need to change. I've said, that's not me. I don't want to do this. I think with my son, talking about Kip, there's been so many times I've had to say, Kip is not a football player, or he is not this, but he is a music student, and I have to learn to go, this is how God made him. He flourishes in the environment when I accept his unchangeables. Now, the changeables are things that I look at him and I say, if we approve of those things that he should change, it's going to harm his life. So I'm not going to do that.
Yeah. And I think it gets really hard when Jerry was talking about that acceptance. What makes it hard is that he was actually better in baseball than he was in football. And so as a parent, that's really practical because lots of times there's things that our kids are really good at. And it's hard to let go if they just go, this is not what I want to do or who I want to be. So there's a lot of dialoguing, a lot of talking back and forth. And so we want you to hear that it is not hard to live out, but it is so important.
I remember we were teaching some place sometime not long ago, and a man walked up to me and said, okay, I want to accept my kids, and there's just some things that we like to do sinful together. I said, I'm not talking about that.
Yeah, no.
I'm talking about it. You accept the unchangeables, you discipline the changeables. Okay, real quickly, in our last few minutes, how do you daily delight in your kids? Here's a catch mantra we use. Here it is: time, touch, and talk. How do you express acceptance to your kids? It's in time spent with them, the way you can be affectionate with them, and the way that you can affirm them and talk to them. Now, there's a lot there to unpack. Let's talk first of all about how to daily delight in your kids by the time that you spend with your kids. Expressive love is first of all spelled T-I-M-E. I know that you love me because you want to be physically present with me. You want to spend time with me. The people that I express love to, I'm around. And your kids know that inherently. One of the greatest ways, and we would say the first way that you express delight in your kids is by spending time with them. There's two types of time, if you will. Everybody knows this, there's quality time and there's quantity time. I don't know the difference, and I don't know if it's important you know the difference, but let me tell you what is important related to time, is that we'll use this term, you find points of connection and commonality and common ground with your kids so that you can spend time with them, especially as they get older in their teen years. You've got to intentionally find ways that with each child that we share something in common together, or we have a commonality and we have a point that we connect. And every child's a little different. But time doesn't just mean, okay, let's do some once a week thing together. It's a daily thing. We're talking about how to daily delight in your kids. And I will tell you this, the easiest way, especially as my kids get older, to spend time with them is to find things that we share in common. And also that I learn to embrace the things they enjoy doing that are just who they are. Not sin. I'm not embracing their sin. But I'm embracing things that they enjoy doing that I can enter into their world. Give an example again. My son Kip, my 15-year-old, we've always known he's musical. But he never wanted to pursue it and never wanted to pursue guitar. Well, I'm not musical, but I love music. I've always loved music. I go to bed every night listening to music. Everything from Christian music to classic rock. I love music, always have. Well, about 2 months ago, we started noticing all of a sudden, Kip has this natural ability and desire to play the guitar. It was because of school. He had a good teacher. And I thought, well, I'm not musical, but I love music, so I want to find a point of connection with him. It was so interesting. He comes downstairs about 2 months ago, and he's kind of picking that guitar. And I said, Kip, you got to learn how to play the old Led Zeppelin song from the 70s, Stairway to Heaven. Well, now a lot of people, Christian parents would go, you're going to let your kid play Stairway to Heaven? Well, he turned it on. He loved it. And starting about then, almost every night since then, because he knows that it's kind of a point of connection with me, that I think it's cool that he can play this song. He's come down for 2 straight months and said, okay, I've learned more of the song. Listen, listen, listen. Well, it's me trying to enter into his world. Now, somebody could say, well, that's kind of a questionable song. I'd say, well, let me tell you what's more questionable. Me not finding something to have a connection with my son in. Let me tell you something, and I'll say this bluntly. My kid's not going to be messed up one day because he learned how to play Stairway to Heaven on his guitar. He might be messed up one day, though, if he didn't have any connection with his dad. So if it means that I have to encourage him to play Stairway to Heaven because he knows I think that's kind of fun and cool, and he can do it, and every night it's our point to get the connection together, well, the emotional connection that he and I have over this is more beneficial than us not finding some place to connect. Now, again, we're not connecting over sin. We're not going out and getting drunk together. But if it means we listen to some old classic rock together and he has his dad's approval and his dad's attention and he feels accepted, I'm all over that. Does that help?
Absolutely. It's good.
So there's attention, time. Second was touch, affection. Boy, we live in a world right now that everybody's telling us not to touch it, and we get it. But you know what touch says in a home? It tells somebody the level of blessing or connection you had to me. If I don't touch somebody, it's because we have natural boundaries of barriers, especially today. But if I affectionately touch somebody, it's telling something to my kids. A child who grows up in a home, especially a Christian home, with a lack of sincere affection, there is something not healthy for that child. One of the great ways that you show your kids that you delight in them is that you're able to affectionately touch them. It breaks down barriers. It says you're part of me. It says you're my people. One of the things that your kids want so bad is to know, am I with them? Are they with me? Are we connected? Those homes where there's a lack of affection, that kid feels very, very distant. That home where those kids can feel affection, feel unusually close to you. So in a home with kids, you kiss your kids, you hug your kids, you hold your kids' hands, you wrestle with your kids. You do things with your kids that you would never do with anybody else in the world, which makes those kids feel accepted and special by those parents.
Yeah. I've definitely seen this. Jerry's much better at physical touch than I am. I grew up in a home that was not a lot of physical affection, and physical affection is uncomfortable for me sometimes, so I've had to work a little harder at it, but he's so great with our kids on that. But I noticed with our little girl that's 9, I didn't even tell him this, but she was out of town and she kept telling me in the car, I can't wait to see Dad. And I said, oh yeah, I know he wasn't able to go with us. And I said, why? And she said, I can't wait to give Dad a hug. And I thought, he's always hugging her. It drives me crazy. I'm like, get off of her. You're driving her crazy. Because for me, that would drive me crazy. Mm-hmm. But again, that connection that our kids need is so huge. And I just want you to hear it's not easy for everyone. Yeah. I think physical affection comes easy to some. For me, I get claustrophobic. I don't want, all of that. So I have to work. And another thing I was thinking of, and we've talked about this some, is when Jerry's talking about this stuff, it just, in my head, all I keep thinking is this takes so much patience and so much humility as adults and as parents to just go, man, spending time with your kids, giving physical affection to your kids, and then we're going to talk about talking with our kids. It takes a lot of energy, a lot of humility. So keep those at the forefront. We're not saying these things are easy, and I honestly think this comes more natural to some than others. And so that for those of us that it doesn't come quite as natural, we have to tell ourselves all the time, I want to break a generational cycle. I want to do something different. I want my kids to see something different. So we have to work at it. When we mess up, we have to say, tomorrow's a new day. I'm going to work, harder and let the Lord work through me in that.
Think of it this way. Sometimes it's easier to learn a principle by understanding the opposite. And think of your kids, what's the opposite of time spent with? It's a sense of rejection. What's the opposite of affectionate touch? It's a sense of rejection. What's the opposite of affirmative talk? It's rejection. Many homes, especially old style homes, kids grew up with a lack of time, touch, and talk. The parents provided for them. They loved them. They disciplined them. But there was an absence of close attention and time with. There was an absence of affectionate touch, and there was certainly an absence of affirmative talk. Well, we wonder why that kid in that Christian home ran from the faith. We're going to tell you it had more to do with this than the church they went to, than the things they taught them about the Bible. It was this. That's a radical statement. So how to daily invite your kid finally is talk. This is the biggest one we don't have much time for. We'll pick up some more of this next time. Proverbs 18:1 says that the power of the tongue holds the power of life and death. A tongue can kill, a tongue can heal. A tongue can hurt, a tongue can bless. It's that powerful. There is two kinds of affirmative talk in the home. There is personally affirming your kids, and there's spiritually affirming your kids. Personally affirming your kids, the best verse for that is when Jesus was 30 years old, about to begin his ministry, the heavens parted as he was getting baptized. The literal voice of the Father, his Father said, this is my Son with whom I am well pleased. In the Greek, this is my one and only Son, and I am proud of him. What a word of blessing in life that the Father gave the Son before he entered into true adulthood at 30 years old. Affirmation is simply this. It is simply the personal word that says, I am proud of you. I love you. You are awesome to me. And let me tell you something. People don't read minds. Kids, a 5-year-old and a 10-year-old doesn't really fully read your mind. They have to hear the words. It has to be implanted in their soul. And it changes their life when it's there. When it's not there, also changes their life. The opposite of affirmation would be criticism, condemnation, cut downs. Homes have that, and I can tell you what it does to those kids. It destroys their kids. It destroys them inside out. That's the 40 and 50-year-old in counseling going, well, this is what I've said, or anything else. And then there's also the second kind of affirmation, not just personal, but spiritual. Your kid doesn't just need to hear you say, you are my Son in whom I'm well pleased, but they need to hear you say, and this is my God who loves you. See? It's both. So a kid needs to grow up in a home going, I know what my folks said about me. They love my unchangeables. They accept me for who I was. They told me, and then they told me who God was. So I'm affirming them, how God made them. I'm letting them know this is what God's put in you good. This is who you are. And then I'm affirming who God is to them. And in that environment, that's how you do it. Well, you want to say, how does my kid feel delighted in me? By the time I spend with them, by the way I'm affectionate with them, and what I say to them. Now, that's practical. And see, I like this as a man because I can keep that in my head. Time, touch, talk. How I delight in my kids are is they need my time, they need my touch, they need my verbal talk. And in doing so, I'm really meeting their greatest emotional need, which is acceptance. Please add to this, and I think we're done.
No, I think that's so good. And I was just thinking about that time, touch, talk, and how important that is for our kiddos. I hope you're encouraged by that because it's not easy to do, but it is something that is so important. And again, we saw it in families and homes, and I know in our own home, it's the hardest to do. So hope you guys were encouraged by that.
See you next week. Thank you.